Hello, this is Melanie Guralnick, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the March 10th issue of the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The first story is World. Top college president quits lucrative role after alleged inappropriate relationship with podcaster, by Danette Wilford. The president of one of the largest universities in the United States is stepping down following an alleged inappropriate relationship with a podcaster. Ohio State University President Ted Carter has officially left his position. According to a show sponsor, Carter's departure may be tied to Chrysanth Valachos, a host of the Columbus-based The Call Out podcast, WCMH reported. Jobs Ohio, an economic development group, said in a statement to the outlet that Carter's resignation is, quote, possibly connected to a relationship between him and the host of a podcast for veterans, which we sponsored. The statement continued. The Call Out podcast opportunity was consistent with that mission of outreach. The sponsorship of this podcast went through our standard and rigorous legal process, as with any sponsorship given by Jobs Ohio. Who is Chrysanth Valachos? Carter, who served in the U.S. Navy for 38 years, is listed as a regular guest co-host on Valachos' podcast. The podcast aims to connect, quote, veteran or active duty service member as co-host, each bringing their own perspective to conversations that matter, according to its description on the host's LinkedIn page. Valachos posted a number of photos of herself and Carter, from recording podcasts to attending events. The most recent post including Carter was in January and shows a leather-clad Valachos flanked by the then university president from January. She is pictured with Carter and Student Veterans of America president Corey Boatwright at the SVA's national conference in Colorado Springs. Valachos called Carter her, quote, dear friend and mentor, in the caption. What his resignation letter said. Carter stepped down over the weekend, according to a copy of his resignation letter shared by the school, per WCMH. Quote, for personal reasons, I have made the difficult decision to resign from my role as president of the Ohio State University, Carter said in the letter. I disclosed to the Board of Trustees that I made a mistake in allowing inappropriate access to Ohio State leadership. He added, I believe we have made much progress during my time at Ohio State, and I'm sorry I'm not able to remain your president longer. In accepting Carter's resignation, Board of Trustees Chair John Zeger said the board was surprised and disappointed to learn of what happened, but was grateful for his support of an orderly transition. How long was Carter at Ohio State? Carter was hired in 2023 and started as school president in January 2024. At the time, he was touted as a, quote, nationally respected, collaborative, and compassionate leader. After receiving a raise in 2025, Carter was one of the highest-paid university presidents in the Big Ten, pulling in nearly $1.2 million, the outlet reported. Trustees approved a larger fringe benefit payment for him days before his resignation. He has been married to his wife Linda for more than 4 decades. There's a picture of Ted Carter, Chrysanth Valachos, and Corey Boatwright. They are pictured in what looks like a ballroom with like very loud-looking carpet and lighted signs on the wall. And Ted is wearing a suit and tie. He's got gray hair. He looks like an older guy. And Chrysanth is in the middle wearing a sleeveless all-black leather outfit. And Corey is also in a suit, and he's wearing glasses, and he's bald. And they all have their arms around each other's backs. Photo by Chrysanth Valachos via LinkedIn. That story was World. Top college president quits lucrative role after alleged inappropriate relationship with podcaster, by Danette Wilford. The next story is Warmington. One-time member of Toronto Police's Muslim Liaison Unit arrested, by Joe Warmington. A Toronto police constable has been suspended following an arrest by Peel Regional Police on charges of assault and sexual assault. Farhan Ali, 39, has been arrested and charged with 3 counts of sexual assault, 3 counts of assault, and 4 counts of mischief, Peel cops said. It is believed the veteran of more than 14 years with Toronto Police was arrested in February. Sources say these allegations are not directly linked to anything while in uniform or on duty. Was in video that created a stir. If the name seems familiar, Ali was in the news in 2025 when he and another officer, who were part of the Toronto Police's Community Partnership Program known as the Muslim Liaison Unit, ran into some controversy with a video that they recorded in uniform with the police logo front and center on a table. In the conversation, as the Toronto Sun's Brian Passafume reported, the two pushed back on criticism of Toronto's anti-Israel rallies as an example of Islamophobia. Said Ali, quote, "When we have somebody labeling a certain group as something they're not, all of the sudden now an Islamophobic undertone." The other officer, Constable Haroon Siddiqui, who is not involved in this criminal probe and remains with the Toronto Police in good standing, said to Ali on the podcast, quote, "A lot of people, after October 7, started learning about Islam. And there have been a lot of reverts through this whole process. The amount of people reverting to Islam is unbelievable. They're educating themselves and saying, why is it that Muslims are being targeted? And why are they being targeted?" Toronto Police apologized. The podcast was removed from circulation, and Chief Myron Demkew apologized for it being recorded and presented on social media. We acknowledged that a recent episode of our podcast, Project Olive Branch, has caused significant upset and concern in the Jewish community and beyond. That was not our intention, and we apologize. The podcast has been removed, Toronto Police said at the time. Demkew added, "We recognize the Jewish community's profound pain and anguish as a result of October 7th and the ensuing rise of anti-Semitism. I have personally heard from the community about the impact of this podcast, and I'm truly sorry. Our commitment to protecting our Jewish communities remains unwavering." At the time, Michelle Stock, Ontario Vice President for the Centre for Israel and Jewish Affairs, CIJA, questioned why the video post was ever permitted. Its creation and uploading raise important questions about the oversight and appropriateness of this content, Stock wrote, adding, "The comments made lead us to question how such remarks were allowed to be published on an approved Toronto Police platform, with both officers in uniform, without a proper review of their potential impact." Reaction to the video. It was not taken well by the Jewish community, who, in addition to dealing with the horrors of 1,200 people being slaughtered on October 7, 2023, still had hostages who'd been kidnapped by Hamas. Many people in the Jewish community were concerned to see a serving Toronto police officer appear in uniform on that podcast. Some of the comments and associations surrounding it left members of the community extremely uncomfortable, said Matthew Taub, CEO of Unapologetically Jewish. The concern here isn't about motives or the legal process now before the courts. It's about professionalism and maintaining public confidence in policing. The criminal allegations toward Ali have not been tested in court. He is to be considered innocent until proven guilty. but he will not be deployed to duty by Toronto Police during this process. PC Farhan Ali is suspended with pay, as per the requirements of the Community Safety and Police Act of Ontario, said Toronto Police spokesperson Stephanie Sayer. There is a picture of an Instagram post. The name of the person posting it is Leviathan, and there is a picture of what appears to be the podcast, where there are two officers in uniform seated in black chairs with a black background, and their table is a giant police logo. I can't see the top word, but underneath it says police, and in the middle are some gold and red symbols. That is courtesy of Instagram. That story was Warmington. One-time member of Toronto Police's Muslim Liaison Unit arrested, by Joe Warmington. The next story is former Toronto Raptors star fired from NCAA coaching job at Georgia Tech, by Ryan Wohlstatt. Mighty Mouse is out of Georgia Tech's house. Damon Stoudemire, the first Toronto Raptors draft pick, who would go on to be named NBA Rookie of the Year, cementing him as the expansion franchise first star, was fired Sunday night by Georgia Tech. Stoudemire had spent 3 years as the Yellow Jackets head coach, finishing with a 42-55 record, including just 11-20 this season. The team dropped 12 straight games before moving on from Stoudemire, who ESPN reported is still under contract for 2 more seasons. Known as Mighty Mouse while a Raptor, Stoudemire is still Toronto's career leader in assists and minutes per game, is second in steals per game, and fifth in scoring per game. He only spent about 2.5 seasons with the Raptors, but made his mark before forcing a trade to his hometown Portland Trail Blazers, where he would spend 8 of his final 12 NBA seasons. Stoudemire got into coaching in 2016, when he became head coach at Pacific in California. He compiled a 71-77 record in 5 seasons there, winning 2 prestigious awards, before joining the Boston Celtics as an assistant coach in 2021, and was there for 2 long playoff runs, including an NBA Finals loss. He then took over at Georgia Tech, where he led the team to a shocking win over Duke in year 1, a .500 record last season, but an ACC worst 2-16 in conference mark this year. There is a picture of Georgia Tech head coach Damon Stoudemire. He is in the middle of yelling at a referee who's you just see his back, and he's got a black and white striped shirt on. And Damon is his mouth is wide open. He doesn't look too angry, but yeah, he's yelling. And he's dressed really fly. He's got on this really nice plaid jacket. He's got a handkerchief in the pocket and black trousers and a white shirt. Photo credit AP. That story was former Toronto Raptors star fired from NCAA coaching job at Georgia Tech, by Ryan Wohlstatt. The next story is serial killer Alan Legere, who terrorized the Miramichi, dies in prison, by Brad Hunter. The population of hell just expanded by 1. Notorious serial killer Alan Legere is dead. He was 78. Legere's death was confirmed Monday by Correctional Service Canada in a news release, stating, quote, "The monster of Miramichi had died while in our custody in an Edmonton institution." While a cause of death was not provided, the release noted, quote, "As in all cases involving the death of an inmate, the Correctional Service of Canada, CSC, will review the circumstances." What Legere's crimes were. Legere became one of Canada's most notorious serial killers as a result of a murderous rampage in the Miramichi area of northern New Brunswick in the late 1980s. The bearded weird woodsman escaped from prison while serving time for another slaying. and then he proceeded to butcher more people, terrorizing New Brunswick. During a 3-year span in the late 1980s, Leger murdered 5 people and escaped from the maximum security Atlantic Institution in Renouse in 1989. He had been serving a life sentence for his role in the 1986 beating death of Black River shopkeeper John Glendenning. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. While on the loose, Leger killed elderly business owner Annie Flam, sisters Linda and Donnie Dockney, and clergyman James Smith before being recaptured in late November 1989. Late last year, his request for full parole had been denied by the Parole Board of Canada. He was convicted in 1991 for the 4 additional murders and sentenced to life behind bars, with no parole eligibility for 25 years. He was denied parole in 2021 and had appealed the decision, but it was upheld. Death ends dark chapter. Miramichi Deputy Mayor Patty Quinn said Leger's death will bring peace to many in the community. His passing marks the end of a dark chapter in our community, and one those of us of a certain generation remember all too well, Quinn said. Rick McLean was the editor of the Miramichi Leader at the time of the murders, and co-wrote the book called Terror: Murder and Panic in New Brunswick about Leger. There are an astonishing number of people who have remained afraid to even mention his name. So the sense of relief is going to be very real in the community, McLean said. People are sorta gonna be able to take a breath today and put a period on that part of their life. Leger was sent to the Super Maximum Security Penitentiary in Sainte-Anne-de-Plaine, Quebec, but in 2015 he was transferred to the Edmonton Institution in Alberta. He had applied several times for parole. His last attempt was in December. There's a booking picture of the convicted killer Alan Leger. It's not dated. He's standing in front of a white brick wall. He's wearing a white shirt. He's got a little necklace on with a silver, kind of pendant. And he has wild brown hair. It's just curly, it's unkempt. He's got a beard and mustache that's very unkempt. And he's got bushy eyebrows. His eyes are like a dark blue and just overall very creepy vibe. A photo courtesy of Postmedia Files. That story was Serial Killer Alan Leger, who terrorized the Miramichi, dies in prison, by Brad Hunter. The next story is Ontario to table prudent budget on March 26. Bethlyn Falvey, by Ling Hui. The Ontario government will table the provincial budget on March 26. Finance Minister Petal Bethlyn Falvey said Tuesday. At a speech to the Empire Club of Canada, Bethlyn Falvey said the budget will take a, quote, prudent approach by focusing on fostering a resilient economy while investing in sectors that define the future, such as artificial intelligence, advanced manufacturing, clean energy, and critical minerals. As a government, we cannot eliminate uncertainty, but we can mitigate risks with a responsible, balanced fiscal approach that supports public services and infrastructure while maintaining flexibility, he said. The province continues to grapple with economic headwinds created by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff policy, hitting Ontario's manufacturing sector the hardest. He pointed to 6 key themes of the budget: productivity and innovation, a competitive business environment, infrastructure and housing, trade, talent and workforce, and reliable, affordable, clean energy. The budget will be tabled during the first week MPPs return to the legislature from an extended winter break. The spring session at Queen's Park begins on March 23rd. The budget will be the second one the Conservative government has tabled since winning a third mandate in last year's winter election, and the fifth one Bethlyn Falvey has tabled since taking over the finance portfolio in 2021. Will there be healthcare cuts? Though Ontario Premier Doug Ford had recently said Bethlyn Falvey was concerned about the province's health spending, the Premier said Tuesday that the budget will not include any cuts to healthcare. The sector represents the largest spending area in the province's budget, with last year's fiscal plan setting aside $91.1 billion. Hospitals alone need an additional $2.7 billion to meet their full operating needs, their association said, but urgently require $1 billion to address a structural deficit. Back in February, Bethlyn Falvey said healthcare spending was unsustainable. During a fireside chat hosted by the Mississauga Board of Trade, he said, "We just have to deal with reality that we can't keep spending, particularly when our population is flattening," Global News reported. There is a picture of Ontario Finance Minister Peter Bethlyn Falvey, and he's standing in the legislature as he's delivering the Ontario budget. This is in Toronto. He is wearing a suit with a light blue tie. He is mid-clap. I guess he's clapping his hands. And he's got kind of a balding hairline, brown eyes, and he's smiling. And you can see the bottom half of people standing behind him, microphones up. Photo courtesy of Chris Young with the Canadian Press. That story was Ontario to table prudent budget on March 26. Bethlyn Falvey by Ling Hui. The next story is Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport needs help to reach full potential by Kevin Vuong. Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport is a significant asset that has been long prevented from reaching its full potential because of a small but vocal minority. The result has been lost opportunity not only for Torontonians, but the Greater Toronto Area. Contrary to what some activists would have you believe, public opinion has consistently supported the island airport. Poll after poll found the vast majority of Torontonians in favor of keeping it, with the strongest support coming, there's some typo here, coming my former riding of Spadina Fort York, which is home to the airport. I saw that support firsthand while serving as the area's Member of Parliament. More than 3,000 jobs are directly tied to YTZ, and most of those workers live nearby. Like most people, they prefer not to spend hours commuting. For many families in the community, the airport provides stable, local employment. The airport also provides Toronto with a significant competitive advantage. Few major cities have an airport minutes from their downtown core. By enabling quick and efficient access to the city's business district, Billy Bishop strengthens Toronto's position as an economic and financial hub. Substantial impact to the city's economy. The economic impact is substantial. A 2024 study estimated the airport contributes $5.3 billion annually to GDP and generates roughly $250 million in annual tax revenue. Importantly, those benefits are achieved even with a constrained flight schedule. Despite claims from activists, the airport has repeatedly accommodated community concerns, including limiting flight slots below its full operational capacity. During my time as an MP, I participated in extensive consultations with local residents and advocacy groups in good faith. But when an air quality study conducted by the University of Toronto came back, it invalidated one group's hypothesis that blamed the airport. Instead, the study found that most of the air pollution came from the Gardiner Expressway, and thus was supportive of YTZ. One might expect such results to prompt a constructive conversation about maximizing community benefits. Instead, this group moved to try to change the study parameters for a different result. The same dynamic played out with noise concerns. In 2013, the possibility of introducing next-generation aircraft, often called whisper jets, was raised. These planes were proven to be empirically quieter than the turboprops already operating at Billy Bishop. If noise reduction had truly been the primary concern, the proposal should have been welcomed. It wasn't. Politics dominating debate around airport. It's clear that for some activists, the objective was not mitigation, but elimination. Yet the airport long predates most surrounding residential developments. Billy Bishop has been operating since 1940. The nearby Little Norway Park even commemorates the Royal Norwegian Air Force, which trained there during the Second World War. The idea that newcomers to the neighborhood should be able to shut down an established piece of infrastructure is not only unjustifiable, it's outrageous. Over time, the debate around the airport has often become less about facts and more about politics. A small network of advocacy organizations has dominated the conversation, sometimes presenting itself as multiple independent voices while representing a relatively narrow group of individuals. These groups frequently claim to speak for the broader community, yet polling tells a different story. A 2024 survey found more than 3/4 of Torontonians support the airport. Meanwhile, the prolonged political battle has limited the airport's ability to contribute even more than the city's growth. That's why many who care about jobs and economic opportunity welcome the provincial government's willingness to step in. When a debate stalls for years without resolution, leadership sometimes requires decisive action. Airport crucial to waterfront's future. Looking ahead, the potential integration of the airport with new transit infrastructure could transform the waterfront. A future connection to the Ontario Line, its planned King Bathurst station would sit nearby, could create a seamless link between Billy Bishop, downtown, and major attractions along the waterfront. Such connectivity could also strengthen Toronto's position as a destination for conferences and business travel. Business events already account for roughly 40% of tourism spending in Canada and contribute $27.4 billion annually to the national economy. Business travelers typically spend 2 to 3 times more than leisure visitors. Toronto has always been a city with enormous potential. Too often, however, we allow a political stalemate to hold back projects that could help the city thrive. Whatever one thinks of his approach, Premier Doug Ford is moving forward with a vision for the waterfront. As the former MP representing YTZ Airport and the surrounding waterfront communities, I welcome efforts that aim to unlock the airport's potential for the benefit of local workers, our city, and the broader GTA. That story was Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport Needs Help to Reach Full Potential by Kevin Vuong. The next story is Toronto Mayor Wants City Garbage Bins Taken Over and Pay Snow Shovelers by Spiro Papakoski. Mayor Olivia Chow's efforts to overhaul the city's garbage bins and employ snow shovelers was among many agenda items at Tuesday's Executive Committee meeting. Here is a rundown of what the mayor, councillors, and the public discussed during the meeting. Garbage bins. Walk along any major street in Toronto, and you will eventually come across a busted garbage bin. Mayor Chow and Councillor Paula Fletcher want to change that. The city entered into an agreement with Astro Media in 2007 to supply, install, and maintain 25,000 pieces of street furniture, including transit shelters, garbage and recycling bins, benches, posturing structures, and information pillars at no cost to the city. In exchange for the infrastructure, the agreement allows Astral to display advertising on a number of transit shelters and information pillars. However, that contract ends next year, and the mayor wants the city to take back ownership and maintenance of the garbage bins. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Chow and Fletcher recommend that the city separate garbage bins from street furniture contracts, arguing it is the current industry approach. Over the life of the current contract, there have been 5 different designs for the litter bins with varying levels of functionality, as well as issues regarding maintenance and installation, they wrote. With the contract ending, the city can now step in to ensure our litter bins are well designed, well maintained, well placed, responsive to community needs, and end the persistent problem of broken and overflowing litter bins that make our main streets less livable. They are seeking from solid waste and transportation managers the estimated costs to the city for installing and maintaining garbage bins. Snow shoveling. This winter saw large amounts of snowfall on the city. Following thousands of complaints of roads and sidewalks not being cleared in a timely fashion, the mayor has proposed an idea from a counterpart south of the border: paid snow shovelers. Chow recommends that council direct city managers to, quote, develop a paid surge capacity sidewalk shoveling program modeled on the successful approach in New York City for implementation as soon as possible and no later than the 2026 through 27 winter season. Back in 2021, councilors voted to expand sidewalk snow plowing to include all sidewalks. Previously, residents were responsible for clearing sidewalks in front of their homes. Chow said the city has encountered challenges with our sidewalk plows, which has left residents frustrated. At the beginning of the year, the mayor asked city staff to look at paying people who are interested in clearing snow. But legal liability and how that program would operate posed challenges. Other items addressed. Councilors on the committee heard an update about the Weston Foundation's $20 million donation to revitalize the public green space north of the Queen's Park building, as well as comments from community members on protecting the park's ecosystem. In addition, an update was heard about flood protection measures for the Portlands, which includes the installation of final finishes and plantings that can only be done in the spring for the western portion of B.E. Dosage Park, hopefully. Chow would also like to see the city crack down on bad landlords by creating a database to track properties that have multiple complaints. So there's a picture of a broken garbage and recycling bin. It's located at Wellesley Street near Yonge Street in downtown Toronto, and it's black. It looks very filthy, like splattered stuff all over it, and then the front of it is busted open. You can see the sidewalk going down with bicycles parked and buildings. Photo courtesy of Ernest Dorosuk via the Toronto Sun. That story was Toronto Mayor wants city garbage bins taken over and pay snow shovelers by Spiro Papakowski. The next story is gas prices should drop by Thursday, per energy expert, by Jane Stevenson. The Greater Toronto Area should prepare for a dip in the price of gas come Thursday, says Dan McTeague, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. The reason? McTeague says U.S. President Donald Trump's assurances on Monday night that the Strait of Hormuz will remain open for oil shipments is good news at the pumps. The strait links the Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, and is the only route to the open ocean for oil producers in the Gulf. Quote, President Trump's comments Monday night, guaranteeing passage in the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf, and the coordinated move by various G7 and OECD countries to release oil, McTeague said. Oil's in a historic drop, and so is the price of gas come Thursday. McTeague said Tuesday's gas price of 159.9 cents per liter will go to 160.0 cents per liter on Wednesday, and then will drop as much as 7 or 8 cents per liter on Thursday, ranging from 152.0 cents per liter to 154.0 cents per liter. As for diesel, currently at 199.0 cents per liter, McTeague is expecting a 12 cents per liter drop on Thursday to 187.0 cents per liter. The market hasn't closed yet, but it's pretty clear the speech by Trump on Monday has soothed markets that they no longer think there's going to be a serious disruption. So we start to see prices drop back down from where they were Tuesday and Monday, and over the last week. Oil prices spiked after shipments through the strait were disrupted amid the Iran war. Also on Tuesday, Reuters reported that Saudi Arabia has lowered oil output by between 2 million and 2.5 million barrels a day, and the United Arab Emirates has cut its output by 500,000 to 800,000 barrels a day, according to Bloomberg News. Kuwait has also cut output by 500,000 barrels a day, and Iraq by about 2.9 million, the report added. Oil output numbers were from last week. McTeague. They all lowered their output last week because there was a risk of being attacked by Iranian drones and missiles, and many were, McTeague said. This is not numbers from today. This is numbers from the past week. Now there seems to be open passage. Trump has guaranteed that, militarily and insurance-wise. You're going to start seeing vessels moving through there. That's critical, because it explains why oil is down at $11 a barrel, so down to $83. Remember, we started this whole thing, it was $67 a barrel a week ago Friday, he said. It touched $94 on Monday before Trump made his comments, and that's why it's dialed back. So it's on its way back down, as are gasoline prices. That was then, this is now. Everything changed Monday with Trump's speech. Apparently, markets are reassured. That's why they're dumping oil prices. It's back to levels that I think people will find a little more comforting. Trump threatened to ramp up attacks. Trump threatened on Monday to increase attacks on Iran if it disrupts the flow of oil in the Hormuz Strait. If Iran does anything that stops the flow of oil within the Strait of Hormuz, they will be hit by the United States of America 20 times harder, all in caps, than they have been hit thus far, Trump said on his Truth Social platform. I will not allow a terrorist regime to hold the world hostage and attempt to stop the globe's oil supply. And if Iran does anything to do that, they'll get hit at a much, much harder level. That story was Gas Prices Should Drop by Thursday, per Energy Expert, by Jane Stevenson. The next story is Bon Jovi's Rock and Roll Rise Getting Music Biopic Treatment, by Mark Danielle. A movie version of Bon Jovi's early career rise is in the works, with the group's frontman, Jon Bon Jovi, reportedly involved. According to Variety and Deadline, Cody Broder is writing the screenplay for Universal, the studio behind fact-based music biopics on NWA, called Straight Outta Compton, and the Eminem, 8 Mile. The Eminem, weird. Filmmaker Gotham Chopra, who directed the 2024 limited series Thank You Good Night, the Bon Jovi story will produce. Speaking about the docudrama in an interview with Postmedia, Bon Jovi said he wanted something truthful that would cover all the highs and lows of the band. We really wanted to make a truthful piece about the last 4 decades. But it's everybody's truth, Bon Jovi says. We were setting out to make a docuseries that wasn't a puff piece. And so it talks about everything that's happened in this roller coaster ride of a career. That truth meant addressing former guitarist Richie Sambora unceremonious exit from Bon Jovi while they were in the middle of their 2013 Because We Can tour. Although the group still consists of original drummer Tico Torres and keyboardist Dave Bryan, the new incarnation of Bon Jovi features Hugh McDonald on bass, Phil X and John Shanks on guitars, with multi-instrumentalist Everett Bradley rounding out the mix. A director and stars who will play Bon Jovi and the rest of the group's members has yet to be named. Deadline reports that the film won't cover the band's entire career, and will instead focus on the group's early years, and how they got to a place where the band's rock anthems filled stadiums all over the world. Music-centric biopics have proven to be popular with moviegoers. Bohemian Rhapsody, Elvis, Rocket Man, and Bob Marley One Love all hit the right notes with music fans. But a film dedicated to the making of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska, last year's Deliver Me From Nowhere, flopped after months of pre-release hype. Bon Jovi sets touring return. Formed in New Jersey in 1983, Bon Jovi has sold more than 130 million albums worldwide. After taking a break from live performances, as their eponymous singer dealt with an atrophied vocal cord, the Rock and Roll Hall of Famers will return to the road this summer for a series of shows in the US and Europe. In that same 2024 interview with Postmedia, Bon Jovi, now 64, said that the band that bears his name and is known for hit songs like You Give Love a Bad Name and Bad Medicine managed to hang around because they followed their hearts. It was hard work, perseverance, not chasing fads nor fashions, staying true to who we are and what we are, he said as he contemplated their staying power. There's no substitute for hard work. In 2020, as the world was in the midst of a global pandemic, Bon Jovi said he tried to write songs reflecting the tumultuous moment in human history, including one track called American Reckoning, that touched on the death of George Floyd. I never tried to be something I wasn't, he told Postmedia. When we first came to Toronto in 1984, and we played at the El Macombo, and I made the rounds on the video channels, and went on the radio station with Joey Vendetta, that's who we were, and I was at the time. People joined this journey, and some got off when they got married or had kids or stopped listening to rock and roll. That was okay. Other people got on the train as the years went on. That's the way a true career is. Some people are there from the beginning, others get on midway through, and some only get on at the end. He also said he'd never get tired of chasing perfection when it came to making music. To this day, I don't know that I really believe that we've achieved what I was hoping to do. It's just that constant desire to do better than last time, Bon Jovi said. And I don't mean that in measuring chart success or records sold. It's the artistic feeling that I get when I write a song, because that, more than recording it or performing it live, is the closest thing that a songwriter has to immortality. That is the ultimate goal in our business, to write a song that is going to outlive you. There is a picture of the group Bon Jovi. They're performing at the Air Canada Centre in Toronto in 2017. And John Bon Jovi's in front of a microphone. He's got a black leather jacket on that's zipped up part way, and he's got a blue t-shirt underneath that says Toronto Maple Leafs on it. And he's got his mouth open wide like he's singing. His hair is salt and pepper gray and kind of bouffantish in a good way. And then you could see the drum set and the drummer behind him. Photo courtesy of Michael Peake via the Toronto Sun. That story was Bon Jovi's Rock and Roll Rise getting music biopic treatment by Mark Danielle. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The next story is Councillor Pushing for Outdoor Maple Leafs Game at Rogers Centre by Spiro Papikoski. A Toronto councillor is making a push for the Maple Leafs to play an outdoor game in the city for the second time in franchise history. Councillor Paul Ainslie will present a motion to the city's executive committee Tuesday that could see the Leafs host a Stadium Series game at the home of the Blue Jays. The game could take place at the Rogers Centre with the roof open, providing a magnificent view of the CN Tower and Toronto's city skyline, creating an unforgettable backdrop for fans and global broadcasts or another iconic outdoor stadium. His letter to committee members reads, he points out that the Stadium Series has never been held in Canada and wants to change that, suggesting a game in 2027 would be an ideal time to help celebrate the 100th anniversary of the franchise being renamed to the Maple Leafs from Toronto Hockey Club. Deep Hockey Heritage. This milestone offers a unique opportunity to celebrate Toronto's deep hockey heritage, while positioning the city as a leader in hosting premier sporting events, he wrote to the committee. The Maple Leafs hosted the Detroit Red Wings for the Centennial Classic on January 1, 2017, at BMO Stadium, home of Toronto FC and Argonauts, to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the franchise's founding, as well as the NHL itself. The Leafs also skated in the 2022 Heritage Classic against the Buffalo Sabres, but that game was held at Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton. Recommends city-endorsed TO as host. Ainslie recommends City Council endorse Toronto as a host city for a major outdoor game and requests that the NHL consider the city for such an event. In addition, he would also like the city manager to notify team ownership, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, of Council's endorsement of Toronto as a host city, and to pursue the possibility of a game with league bosses. The NHL Stadium Series would offer, quote, a model for a made-in-Toronto hockey showcase, which would generate significant economic and tourism benefits, he added. Toronto hosting a major outdoor stadium game would break tradition in a meaningful way, allowing all NHL teams to be considered for participation while reinforcing Toronto's status as a global sports hub, he wrote. That story was Councillor Pushing for Outdoor Maple Leafs Game at Rogers Centre by Spiro Papikoski. The next story is Crown Corps Spent Big on Board Meeting Meals, Records Show by Brian Pessifume. Ottawa. Dinner's on us. Documents uncovered Tuesday by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation outline fancy meals, delectable spreads, and high-priced dining for the boards of some of Crown corporations. Some of these Crown Corporation boards seem to think it's fine to expense big bills from fancy restaurants because they think everyone's doing it. But that's out of touch and irresponsible, said the CTF's federal director Franco Terrazzano. Even their counterparts at other crowns are puncturing that culture of entitlement. Tens of thousands spent on meals and receptions. The figures were sourced from online proactive government disclosures. Average Canadian families, Terrazzano said, could buy groceries for a year for less than what some boards paid to cater their meetings. Among the worst offenders on the CTF's list was the Canada Foundation for Innovation, which, according to the documents, spent $26,529 on board meeting meals in 2025 alone, with expenses including over $4,200 paid each for a pair of receptions at Vancouver and Toronto Hyatt hotels. Records also show that Foundation CEO Sylvain Charbonneau expensed $3,881 for a December 2025 board meeting, described as, quote, a working dinner, lunch, and refreshments for 20 people at a downtown Ottawa hotel. Another high spender was the Business Development Bank of Canada, or BDC, whose board of directors racked up $20,864 for a catering bill, almost exclusively from a Verdun, Quebec high-end caterer, while the National Gallery of Canada board spent $12,566 at some of the National Capital Region's best restaurants. Among the $12,334 spent by the Royal Canadian Mint's Board of Directors included $2,428.73 for a 15-person meal at a pricey Winnipeg steakhouse in September 2025. That averages out to around $162 per person. Not all Crown corporations spend big. Other agencies were comparatively frugal in their meal expenses. The $2,349 meal expenses for the Canadian Grain Commission's Board of Directors largely included food sourced from local grocery stores and delicatessens, and featured $63 spent at Tim Hortons for coffee and donuts by Chief Commissioner David Hunt for a 13-person committee meeting. Telefilm Canada's meal bill only came to $4,062 in 2025, including $435.96 for 9 guests at a reasonably priced Montreal eatery, and shopping for board members' snacks at discount grocery stores. Other low spenders include the Canada Council for the Arts, $257 spent in 2025, Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, $237, and VIA Rail, $357. Prime Minister Mark Carney said he's looking for ways to save money, and these records show he doesn't need Millhouse-sized glasses to find waste at Crown corporations, Terrazzano said. The government is broke. Canadians are struggling, and Carney needs to crack down on these extravagant taxpayer-funded expenses. That story was Crown Corps spent big on board meeting meals, records show, by Brian Passafiume. The next story is Australia grants humanitarian visas to members of Iranian women's soccer team, by Brian Toey. 7 members of the Iranian women's soccer team are in Australia, while the rest of the team has left the country for Iran, CNN reported. 5 members of the women's soccer team who were seeking asylum in Australia are being allowed to stay and were granted humanitarian visas after fearing for their safety if they were returned to Iran, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said. Last night, I was able to tell 5 women from the Iranian women's soccer team that they are welcome to stay in Australia, to be safe, and have a home here, Australia's Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke added on X. Now, another 2 members of the team, a staffer and a player, are also seeking asylum in Australia, according to the report. The rest of the team is believed to have left the country for Iran. Group tried to block bus from leaving. An observer at the scene told CNN that a group of people outside of the hotel, where the team was staying on Tuesday, tried to stop the team's bus from heading to the local airport, shouting at police to, quote, save our girls, as the bus pulled away. They also said one of the players appeared to be crying as what appeared to be security guards escorted the team onto the bus. Hadi Karimi, a human rights advocate who is a member of the Australian-Iranian community, said at least 3 of the players were seen inside the bus making the international hand signal for help. U.S. President Donald Trump took to Truth Social site to praise Australia's move, saying, "I just spoke to Prime Minister Anthony Albanese of Australia concerning the Iranian national women's soccer team. He's on it. 5 have already been taken care of, and the rest are on their way. Some, however, feel they must go back because they're worried about the safety of their families, including threats to those family members if they don't return." He added that Albanese is doing a, quote, "very good job with this rather delicate situation. God bless Australia." Women threatened after refusing to sing anthem. Before the decision allowing the players to stay, Trump had criticized Australia and said the country's politicians were, quote, "making a terrible humanitarian mistake if the women were not granted asylum," adding, "the U.S. will take them if you won't." The controversy started before an AFC Women's Asian Cup matchup between Iran and South Korea on March 2, when the Iranian women refused to sing or salute their own national anthem to protest the hardline Islamic regime and to show solidarity with women protesting in that country. The regime called for harsh punishments for the women, with state media calling them traitors, displaying, quote, "the pinnacle of dishonor." Journalist believes women were threatened. In following matches, the women sang the anthem, though Alireza Mohebi, a correspondent for the London-based Iran International News Network, told the Australian Broadcasting Corporation that he believed the women must have been intimidated into doing so. It's completely obvious that the Islamic Republic's regime and the security team, which is with the players in Australia, forced them to sing the anthem, he said. In the first match with South Korea, they didn't do it. But now, with all the pressure and media spreading the news around the world, it's completely obvious the regime pushed them not to just sing the anthem, but do the military salute. There is no doubt. That's all the time we have for this story, which was Australia Grants Humanitarian Visas to Members of Iranian Women's Soccer Team, by Brian Toey. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the March 10 issue of the Toronto Sun. Your reader has been Melanie Goralnik. Thank you for listening.